Did you know that in 1922, an entire German family was murdered by someone who had been secretly living in their house for months? The Gruber family lived on an isolated farm called Hinterkaifeck. For weeks before their deaths, they noticed disturbing signs: footsteps echoing from the empty attic at night, tools vanishing from the barn, strange footprints in the snow leading to their house but never leaving. The family patriarch found a newspaper in his home that he'd never bought. On March 31st, someone killed all 6 family members with a pickaxe. The youngest victim was just 2 years old. But here's what makes this truly horrifying. For 3 days after the murders, neighbors saw smoke rising from the farmhouse chimney. Someone was still inside. When police finally investigated, they found evidence the killer had fed the livestock, eaten the family's food, and slept in their beds. Whoever did this had turned the Gruber home into their own personal sanctuary of death. Despite over 100 suspects, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain Germany's most chilling unsolved case. December 2nd, 1984, 3 a.m., Bhopal, India. A deadly cloud began creeping through the streets. 40 tons of poison gas escaped from a Union Carbide pesticide plant. People woke up choking, gasping for air that burned their lungs like acid. Families ran blindly through toxic fog. Children collapsed in their parents' arms. Entire neighborhoods became graveyards by sunrise. 3,000 people died that first night. But the horror was just beginning. Union Carbide knew their safety systems were failing. They'd cut costs by reducing staff and shutting down backup systems. The plant was a disaster waiting to happen. When it did, the company blamed local workers, then fled the country. 40 years later, 500,000 people still suffer from that night. Birth defects, cancer, blindness. The groundwater remains poisoned. Union Carbide paid just $470 million in compensation, less than what they spent on advertising that year. The Bhopal disaster wasn't just an accident. It was corporate murder on an unimaginable scale, and they got away with it. In 1995, a blind man convinced thousands that the world was ending, so they decided to end it themselves. Shoko Asahara started as nobody. Partially blind, failed businessman, desperate for power. Then he discovered people would follow anyone who promised answers. He mixed Buddhism with apocalypse fantasies, told followers they were chosen, that Armageddon was coming, whether they liked it or not. But Asahara had a plan. If the world wouldn't end naturally, he'd give it a push. His cult, Aum Shinrikyo, built secret labs, recruited chemists, spent months perfecting sarin gas, a nerve agent so deadly that a single drop can kill. March 20th, rush hour in Tokyo. 5 cult members boarded different subway trains. They punctured plastic bags filled with liquid death and walked away. Within minutes, commuters started collapsing, foaming at the mouth, convulsing on platform floors. 13 people died. Thousands were poisoned. The massive manhunt that followed revealed the terrifying truth. A religious movement had become the world's first bioterrorist organization. All because one man convinced others that mass murder was salvation. In 1983, 5 men went to work on an oil rig in the North Sea. Only one survived. What happened next defied human comprehension. The Byford Dolphin was a diving support vessel. Deep sea divers lived in pressurized chambers, breathing a mixture of helium and oxygen. On November 5th, a routine procedure went catastrophically wrong. A diving bell was being disconnected when someone opened the wrong clamp. In a fraction of a second, the pressure dropped from 9 atmospheres to 1. The human body isn't designed for that. 4 divers died instantly. Their blood boiled. Their organs exploded outward. But the 5th victim suffered the most horrific fate imaginable. The explosive decompression forced his entire body through a gap just 24 inches wide. Every bone shattered. His remains were found scattered across the rig. The oil company tried to cover it up. They blamed human error, but investigators discovered the truth. Faulty equipment, ignored safety protocols, corporate negligence. The Byford Dolphin accident remains the most gruesome workplace disaster in offshore drilling history. A reminder that some mistakes leave no room for survival. In 1918, World War I ended, but parts of France are still fighting that war. Over a century later, vast areas remain completely off limits to humans. Forever. They're called the Zone Rouge, the Red Zone, and they're more dangerous today than when the guns fell silent. Poison gas still seeps from the soil. Artillery shells detonate without warning. Chemical weapons buried in the mud continue claiming lives. Entire towns were declared uninhabitable and erased from maps. Places where families lived for generations simply cease to exist. Every year, farmers working near these zones uncover human remains, skeletons still wearing gas masks, bodies preserved in toxic earth. The French government estimates it will take 700 years to clear all the unexploded ordnance, maybe longer. Some areas are so contaminated they'll never be safe. The poison has become part of the land itself. These red zones represent something terrifying, proof that human conflict can wound the earth so deeply, it never heals. A permanent scar from the war to end all wars.